On a visit back to my parents' place, I stumbled upon the news that my sister was planning her wedding. When I asked my mother about it, she confirmed it, but warned me to stay away, telling me it had nothing to do with me. I couldn't just accept that, so on the day of the wedding, I secretly made my way to the location. The sight that met me there left me utterly shocked and speechless. This is the second part of the story. You can watch the first one in the link given in the description. Clara, you're here. Her mother Helen's voice carried more tension than warmth. Her mother looked older than Clara remembered, but her perfectly styled hair and makeup showed that her dedication to appearance remained intact. It's been a while. Mom! Even as they embraced, there was an unspoken distance between them. Helen quickly moved away from the entrance, leading Clara to the living room. The interior had barely changed since her father, Richard, passed away 4 years ago. His old leather armchair still occupied its place in front of the television, as if he might return at any moment. "Where's Sophie?" Clara asked about her sister. "She went out shopping. She should be back soon." Helen's answer was curt, her eyes avoiding Clara. "How's life in Chicago? Is Mark well?" "Yes, we're both fine. My design firm is doing well, and I've been getting more requests from major clients lately." Clara spoke about her successful life in Chicago, but her mother's response was tepid. Helen stood up to make coffee, heading toward the kitchen with a somewhat flustered demeanor. Her back radiated a tension that suggested she was hiding something. Years ago, when Clara decided to move to Chicago, her relationship with her family became strained. Her father, Richard, especially objected, saying, "How could you move so far from home?" Original strange insertion modified. "Do you know some people earn over $15,000 a month just by posting Reddit stories on YouTube? No face, no voice, just a laptop. I'd do it too. Link below if you're curious." Even at her father's funeral, Clara had stayed for just 1 day before leaving. This time, she had taken several days off to return home, hoping to find some way to reconcile. When Helen returned with coffee, she stared at Clara's wedding ring and abruptly asked, "Are there any problems between you and Mark?" "No, nothing in particular." Clara tilted her head. "Why?" "No reason." Helen hastily changed the subject. "I've kept your room just as it was. Why don't you take your luggage up?" Clara headed to her room on the second floor. Opening the door, she found the posters and trophies from her teenage years still preserved. It was like a space where time had stopped. She sat down her bag and gazed at the backyard through the window. The peach tree she had planted with her father, Richard, had grown impressively. "Sis?" Turning around, she saw Sophie standing in the doorway. After graduating from college, Sophie worked at a local real estate company. Though smaller in build than Clara, she had the same brown eyes and soft, curly hair. "Sophie!" The sisters embraced tightly. Sophie's hug was warm, but her eyes revealed some uneasiness. "Sorry, I was out shopping. I wasn't sure when you'd arrive." "Don't worry about it. So what's new with you? Anything exciting happening?" Sophie hesitated for a moment. "Nothing special. Same as always." Clara sensed something odd about her sisters. Awkward smile, but didn't press further. They went downstairs together to help prepare dinner. During the meal, conversation remained superficial, covering topics like the weather and neighborhood gossip. Clara felt a strange tension, as if the entire family was hiding something. That night, while Helen was in the bath, Clara entered her mother's room to drop off something she had forgotten. On the bedside table were her father's photograph and medication bottles. She accidentally knocked a file folder off the shelf, and its contents scattered across the floor. As Clara hurriedly picked them up, she found a booklet labeled Wedding Planner and a brochure for the luxury Desert Blossom Hotel. Leafing through further, she saw Sophie Hayes' name and a date 3 weeks away. Clara gasped. Sophie was planning a wedding, and no one in the family had told her about it. Why was she the only one excluded? Questions swirled in Clara's mind. "Clara, what are you doing?" Turning around, she saw Helen standing at the entrance in her bathrobe. Her mother's expression mixed anger and fear. "Sophie's getting married?" Clara's voice trembled. "Why didn't you tell me?" Helen quickly snatched the documents from Clara's hands and shoved them into a drawer. Her mother's eyes reflected anger along with something else. Fear, or perhaps guilt. "This doesn't concern you. Don't you dare come." Helen's words were sharp, piercing Clara's heart. "What do you mean? How could I not attend my own sister's wedding?" "There are circumstances. Please don't ask any more." Helen stubbornly closed the subject. "Talk tomorrow morning. Go to bed now." Clara returned to her room in confusion. Through the window, countless stars shone in the night sky. but her heart was covered in dark clouds. She picked up her cell phone and called Mark. After it went to voicemail twice, her husband finally answered on the fourth try. "Clara, what's up? Did you get to your parents' house?" Mark's voice sounded somewhat tense. "Mark, something unbelievable has happened. It seems Sophie is getting married, but no one told me anything about it." There was a moment of silence on the other end. "I see. That's strange. Mom told me not to come to the ceremony. Isn't that weird?" "Well, there might be complex family circumstances." Mark's voice sounded strained. "By the way, I have meetings for a big project starting this coming week, so I might not be able to contact you much. Don't worry." What should I do? Should I go to the wedding? Well, if you weren't invited, maybe you shouldn't go. You should respect your family's wishes. Clara frowned. This advice was unlike Mark, who usually told her to be true to her feelings. "I understand. Good night." After hanging up, Clara immediately dialed another number. Her maternal Aunt Diane had been Clara's emotional support since childhood. Diane answered on the third ring. "Clara, it's been a while. You're back at your parents' house?" "Aunt Diane, something terrible has happened. It seems Sophie is getting married, but nobody told me anything." The sound of Diane catching her breath came through the phone. "Well, did you know about it?" "I had heard about it." Diane's voice sounded apologetic. "But I don't know the details. Helen just said there were special circumstances." "What special circumstances? Am I not family?" Clara's voice shook with anger and sadness. "Of course you're family, Clara. But I don't know everything either. You should ask Helen directly." Clara couldn't get a clear answer from Diane either. She spent a sleepless night. The next morning, Helen skillfully avoided Clara's questions, saying only, "Ask Sophie." However, Sophie had left early and wouldn't return until evening. Clara made a decision. She called her high school best friend, Laura Bell. Laura was also close with Sophie and active in the local community. "Laura, it's been a while. I wanted to ask you something." "Clara, you're back for Sophie's wedding?" Laura's straightforward question momentarily left Clara speechless. "Actually, I wanted to ask you about that. Could you tell me the details?" "You don't know?" "It's 3 weeks from Saturday at the Desert Blossom Hotel Garden at 3 p.m., Laura answered without hesitation. "I'm not a bridesmaid, but I was invited. They're a lovely couple, aren't they?" "Yes." Clara maintained her composure despite being on the phone where she couldn't be seen. "What's the groom like?" "Oh, you don't know him?" Laura exclaimed in surprise. "He's a businessman, I heard, coming from Chicago. His name is... wait, Mark, I think?" Clara nearly dropped her phone. Her heart raced and she felt breathless. "Mark?" Her voice trembled. "Yes, that's it. Do you know him?" "Thanks, Laura. I'll call you back." Clara quickly hung up. Her mind went blank, and the room seemed to spin. Mark Evans. That was her husband's name. But it had to be someone with the same name. That was the only explanation she could accept. But if it really was her husband, then his strange behavior on the phone last night, his frequent business trips over the past several months, his recent restlessness, it would all make sense. With trembling hands, Clara dialed Mark's number. This time she needed to hear his voice directly to confirm. But the call went straight to voicemail. "Mark, it's me. Call me back immediately. It's important." Clara headed to Sophie's room. Her sister hadn't returned yet, but Clara had a way to check. Sophie's door was open. Despite feeling guilty, Clara went to her sister's desk. Searching through the drawers, she found a small jewelry box. Opening it, she discovered an engagement ring, an elegant platinum ring with a large, sparkling diamond. Clara picked up the ring and looked inside. There was a small engraving. "Forever," from M.E. The moment she saw that engraving, Clara's world collapsed. M.E. Mark Evans. Furthermore, she recognized the ring's design. It was from a jewelry brand they had looked at together 4 years ago, when Mark had said it was too expensive. The front door opened, and Sophie's voice could be heard. Clara quickly returned the ring and went back to her own room. Her heart pounded fiercely, with countless thoughts swirling in her head. She picked up her phone and sent Mark a message. "I know the truth. No more lies." The reply came immediately. "What are you talking about?" "About the wedding. With Sophie." This time there was no response. Clara opened her suitcase in her room and began packing her clothes. There was a knock at the door and Sophie entered. "Sis? What are you doing? Are you leaving?" Sophie's voice, was tinged with anxiety. Clara turned around, feigning calmness. Yes, I've got some urgent work. I need to go back to Chicago. I see. That's too bad. Sophie's eyes remained fixed on the floor. Clara wanted to scream inside. Why? Why with my husband? But she maintained her composure. She still needed confirmation, and she had a plan. I'm sorry, but I'll be back in 3 weeks. Sophie's face paled. 3 weeks? Yes. Is there something special happening around then? Clara deliberately asked. No, nothing. Sophie's voice was thin, and she was clearly lying. Clara smirked. I see. That night, Clara boarded a flight to Chicago, but her mind was already at the Desert Blossom Hotel 3 weeks later. Mark called several times, but Clara didn't answer. She intended to confirm the truth with her own eyes, and if Mark and Sophie were really planning to get married. Clara clenched her trembling hands. She would definitely attend that special day. The Desert Blossom Hotel was a luxury resort built to blend into the desert landscape on the outskirts of Phoenix. Even in Arizona's dry air, the scent of flowers announcing the wedding's splendor wafted through. Clara parked her car at the edge of the parking lot and adjusted her sunglasses. The black, short-haired wig completely concealed her naturally. Long brown hair. Looking at her reflection in the mirror, she hesitated for just a moment. Was this really the right choice? But that question was quickly replaced by anger and determination. Having come this far, I'll see it through to the end. Instead of heading to the hotel entrance, Clara took a side path to the back of the garden. Laura had told her the wedding would be held at the outdoor garden terrace. She hid behind some foliage and gradually approached the venue. White chairs were neatly arranged, and the arch was decorated with white and pink roses. In several hours, her sister and husband would exchange vows here. The absurdity of the situation brought a bitter smile to Clara's face. This area is off-limits to non-attendees. Startled by the sudden voice, Clara nearly jumped. Turning around, she saw a hotel staff member in uniform. Oh, I'm sorry. I got a little lost. Clara lowered her voice as she replied. I'm here for a friend's wedding, and I was looking for a changing room. Your name, please? Laura Bell. Clara said without hesitation, using her friend's name. The staff checked the list and nodded. Miss Bell, I see. The guest changing room is in a separate building. This way, please. Clara breathed a sigh of relief and followed the staff. Entering the changing room, she found several women already there, all busy with preparations. Clara sat in a corner, careful not to make eye contact with anyone. As time passed, the changing room gradually emptied. Clara took the opportunity to slip into the hallway and look for a back way to the ceremony site. With the wedding time approaching, hotel staff were busily moving about. She found a hidden spot in a corner of the hallway leading to the garden terrace. From there, she could see the entire venue while remaining concealed behind a large potted plant. It was the perfect observation point. Soon, guests began taking their seats. Clara spotted her mother, Helen, dressed in an elegant navy dress. She sat in the front row, her expression showed joy, but with something shadowy lurking beneath it. Aunt Diane sat nearby. Many family members and relatives Clara knew had gathered, though there were few from her father's side. Suddenly, music began to play softly, and everyone stood up. Clara's heart raced. From a distance, she could see a man in a black tuxedo. Clara gasped. Mark Evans, her husband, was standing next to the minister. This can't be happening. Though she had understood it intellectually, seeing it with her own eyes made the reality too cruel. Mark's face looked tense, but somehow radiant. He wore an expression different from when he was with Clara. The wedding march began to play, and everyone's attention focused on the beginning of the aisle. Sophie appeared, escorted by their Uncle George, who was standing in for their father. She was dressed in a pure white wedding gown with a beautiful mermaid line that perfectly fit her slender body. Her hair was elegantly styled up, and her smile was visible beneath the veil. Clara felt her body trembling. This was a nightmare. Her sister was about to marry her husband. It didn't seem real. Sophie slowly proceeded down the aisle and stood beside Mark. They gazed at each other, and Mark took Sophie's hand. The sight tore at Clara's heart, remembering how he had once taken her hand with the same gesture. The minister began to speak. Today, we are gathered to celebrate the marriage of Sophie Hayes and Mark Evans. Clara wanted to cover her ears, but she had come to witness everything. As the minister's words continued, memories raced through Clara's mind like a kaleidoscope. The day 6 years ago when she first met Mark at a Chicago cafe, the beautiful view of Lake Michigan the night he proposed, their small wedding, and the life they had built together, even as she pursued her career. If anyone has reason to object to this union, speak now or forever, hold your peace. The minister's traditional words brought Clara's thoughts back to reality. The venue fell silent. Helen looked around nervously. At that moment, something broke inside Clara. She leaped out from behind the potted plant and ran onto the aisle. "I object!" Clara's voice echoed throughout the venue. Everyone turned to her with shocked expressions. The blood drained from Mark's face, and Sophie froze with her mouth open. "That man is my husband!" Clara removed her sunglasses and took off her wig. Her long brown hair fell to her shoulders. Helen screamed and clung to her chair. "Clara!" Sophie's voice was thin. Clara took a few steps forward. "Surprise! I thought I'd join you!" Mark was rigid as stone. "Clara, what are you doing here?" "What am I doing?" Clara laughed bitterly. "I've come to stop my husband from marrying my sister." The venue erupted in chaos. Guests raised confused voices looking at each other. Shock and dismay appeared on people's faces as they began to understand that Clara's words were true. "This is a misunderstanding," Mark said desperately. "If we talk, you'll understand." A misunderstanding? Clara's laughter had hysteria in it. "We've been married for 6 years. What part of that is a misunderstanding?" Sophie dropped her bouquet and covered her face with both hands. Helen stood up. "Clara, stop it! Don't embarrass yourself in front of everyone." "Embarrassment?" Clara turned to her mother. "I'm not the one who should be embarrassed. It's all of you, planting this farce without telling me anything." "You've been too busy lately," Mark continued. "Our relationship had become just a formality." "Sophie is—" "Shut up!" Clara's anger exploded. "Just because I was busy with work doesn't justify having an affair with my sister." The venue fell into complete silence. All eyes were on Clara, Mark, and Sophie. "I can't continue the charade any longer." Clara approached Mark and pulled the wedding ring off her left ring finger. "It seems I don't need this anymore." She threw the ring at Mark's chest. The small gold band rolled down his tuxedo and fell. "To the ground. Clara, please." Sophie tried to approach her sister, crying. "Don't touch me!" Clara stepped back. "You're no longer my sister. Both of you, get out of my life!" As Clara turned to leave the venue, Sophie suddenly screamed. She clutched her abdomen, her face contorted. "It hurts! It hurts!" Sophie's face turned pale and she collapsed on the spot. Mark hurriedly supported her and Helen screamed, rushing over. "Someone call an ambulance!" Helen's voice was filled with terror. Clara stopped and turned around. Sophie was lying on the ground, breathing with difficulty. After a moment's hesitation, Clara rushed over. "What's wrong, Sophie?" "The baby," Sophie said, her face twisted in pain. "I'm pregnant." Clara froze at those words. The situation had become even more complicated. A new life was already growing between her husband and sister. The sound of an ambulance siren could be heard in the distance. Clara stood still amidst the confusion. Her life had collapsed moments ago, but at this moment, she was more concerned about her sister's life than her own feelings. Was this what they meant by blood being thicker than water? "It's going to be okay, Sophie." Clara held her sister's hand. "Help is coming." Clara's eyes met Mark's. Between these once loving partners, only complex emotions that words couldn't express now lay. The waiting room at Phoenix General Hospital was filled with tension. Clara sat on a hard plastic chair staring into the distance. Helen sat several seats away, occasionally casting anxious glances at Clara, but not attempting to speak. Mark was in the hospital room. A doctor appeared in the hallway and walked toward Helen and Clara. "Are you the mother?" the doctor asked Helen. "Yes, I am." "Is my daughter all right?" Helen's voice trembled. "She's stable for now. Fortunately, the baby is safe too. However, the symptoms were caused by stress and a sudden rise in blood pressure, so we need to keep her hospitalized for at least overnight to monitor her condition." Helen sighed in relief. "The baby is safe too?" "Thank you," the doctor nodded, and said, "She wants to speak with her family," before leaving. Clara stood up and faced her mother. "Mom, why? Why didn't you tell me anything?" After a long silence, Helen sighed. "Let's sit down, Clara. It seems it's time to talk." They moved to the hospital cafeteria. With coffee in front of them, Helen began to speak. "Sophie and Mark met 8 months ago. It was when he came to Phoenix to visit you." Clara frowned. 8 months ago, when I was away for the Milan project?" "Yes." Helen nodded. "He couldn't meet you, but he happened to meet Sophie and—" She stumbled over her words. "They hit it off." I think it was just friendship at first, but soon they began an affair. Sophie knew he was your husband, but according to her, Mark said his relationship with you had grown cold, that you were too focused on your career and had neglected him. Clara's voice was cold. That's no excuse. Clara made no attempt to hide her irritation. Of course not. Helen agreed with a tired expression. I tried to stop Sophie, but she insisted that my sister only cares about her work. Mark isn't loved. And then 4 months ago, she found out she was pregnant. Clara was speechless with shock. 4 months? Mark said he would take responsibility. Sophie wanted to have the baby. I objected, but Helen covered her face with her hands. If Richard were here, I don't think this would have happened. Footsteps approached from the hallway, and Mark appeared. His face was taut with fatigue and tension. Sophie is fine, he informed Clara and Helen. She's resting a bit. Clara stood up and confronted her former husband. I'd like an explanation. Clara, Mark hesitated, as if choosing his words. What we had was important, but lately, you've always been focused on work and that's a valid reason to cheat. Clara's voice was low, trembling with anger. I'm not trying to justify it, just when I met Sophie, she listened to me. Things you wouldn't listen to. So you chose my sister? Betrayed my family? Mark lowered his gaze. At first it was just friendship. But before I knew it, you didn't contact me or talk about divorce? Clara's words were as sharp as a blade. I was afraid. Mark honestly admitted. I didn't know how to tell you. And when I found out Sophie was pregnant, I thought there was no going back. Another set of footsteps sounded from the hallway, and Sophie appeared, sitting in a wheelchair pushed by a nurse. Her face was pale, and her eyes were swollen. Clara! Sophie's voice was hoarse. Clara faced her sister. She tried to appear calm, but anger and sadness swirled in her chest. Why, Sophie? I'm sorry, Sophie wept. At first we were really just friends, but Mark always listened to me. You're my sister. Clara's voice was filled with pain. How could you think of taking your sister's husband? You were always working, not treasuring him, Sophie protested weakly. He was lonely. Lonely? Clara laughed bitterly. I was working day and night for our future. Who do you think was making all the payments when Mark's company failed? Sophie showed a surprised expression. She looked at Mark. Your company failed? You said you were a successful businessman? Mark shifted uncomfortably. I exaggerated a bit. Exaggerated? Clara laughed coldly. His startup was a complete failure. I was working 2 jobs to support our household for his new business. The blood drained from Sophie's face. She looked at Mark with an expression of betrayal. In the end, neither of you knows anything about the other, Clara said in a tired voice. The hospital room door opened, and the doctor came out. Miss Hayes, let's go back. You and the baby need rest. The nurse began to push Sophie's wheelchair. Sophie turned back and reached out to Clara. Sis, forgive me. Clara took a step back. I can't right now, Sophie. It will take time. Sophie returned to her room, tears streaming down her face. Helen stood up and approached Clara. Clara, you're part of this situation too. Always focused on work. Mom, stop! Clara interrupted her mother. It's my fault? My husband has an affair with my sister, gets her pregnant, and it's my fault? Helen fell silent. You should have protected me as family. Tears welled in Clara's eyes. But instead, you betrayed me. Mark tried to touch her arm, but Clara shook him off. Don't touch me anymore. Contact me through a lawyer. I'm starting divorce proceedings. Clara turned her back and headed for the hospital exit. Her life had crumbled in a day, but there was a new determination in her steps. This wasn't the end. It was a new beginning. Spring in New York had a different softness from Phoenix. In a cafe near Central Park, Clara Hayes was sketching a new design in her sketchbook. Sunlight streaming through the window illuminated her left hand, now without a ring. 18 months had passed. Clara's life had changed dramatically. She had left Chicago and accepted an offer from a major design company in New York. The divorce had been finalized 6 months ago, and she was officially single again. May I sit here? Looking up at the gentle voice, there stood Ethan James. He was an architect at the company where Clara worked, and they had become close through their work. Of course, Clara smiled. Ethan sat down and placed his coffee, peering at Clara's sketch. Wonderful. Is this a new design for the Boston project? Yes, Clara nodded. I'm preparing for the coming week's presentation. After becoming animated, discussing work, Ethan carefully asked, "Any contact from your family?" Clara thought for a moment before answering. "My mother called recently. She apologized, which is rare. Her relationship with Helen wasn't completely repaired yet, but it was gradually improving. At first, her mother had defended Sophie and Mark's relationship, but she seemed to have changed her mind after subsequent developments." And Sophie? Ethan knew. He knew that Clara sometimes had a sad expression when remembering her sister. She miscarried. The events of that day triggered it. Clara's voice was quiet. "Mark apparently abandoned her. I heard he started dating another woman." Ethan silently took Clara's hand. "It's ironic." Clara smiled sadly. "Sophie is now receiving counseling, I hear. She's trying to reflect on her actions and take responsibility. We might reconcile someday." "Time can resolve some things," Ethan said gently. Clara nodded. "I told my mother family isn't just about blood. Trust and respect are important." From the cafe window, the spring sunlight enveloped them. Clara took a deep breath. The past had been painful, but it had made her stronger. Now, a new life stretched out before her. "Would you like to see the new exhibition at the museum this weekend?" Ethan invited. "I'd love to." Clara smiled sincerely. That night, returning to her apartment, Clara opened an email from her mother. Attached was a short letter from Sophie. "I'm truly sorry for the pain I caused you. I'm ashamed of my actions. I sincerely wish for your happiness. I hope someday you'll be able to forgive me. Sophie." Clara quietly wiped away a tear. Forgiveness was still difficult. But someday, when the wounds in her heart had healed, there might come a day for reunion. Outside the window, the New York night skyline sparkled, just like her life beginning a new chapter.